I was Zara Okello, and I came to Dubai not for the sunshine, but for the unforgiving, brilliant glare of the future. I was 28, a Kenyan tech entrepreneur with ambition that felt hotter than the desert sun. I didn't just want a seat at the table. I wanted to build my own boardroom, one that stretched across continents. From my high-rise office in Business Bay, the city looked like a glittering promise. The cranes, the glass towers, the endless construction. It was a monument to aspiration, and I felt utterly aligned with it. My startup, focused on logistical solutions for emerging markets, was thriving. Just last week, I'd closed a major investment round that secured our expansion into Asia. The celebratory champagne tasted like pure, hard-won freedom. But freedom, I learned, could be a lonely thing. My days were a relentless cycle of pitch meetings, coding sessions, and black coffee. While my peers in Nairobi were settling down, building families, I was building an empire alone, often eating cold takeout while staring at the endless grid of city lights below. I was independent, yes, fiercely so, but sometimes I craved a different kind of stability, a foundation that didn't require me to fight for every single brick. I had arrived in Dubai with nothing but my skill and my drive, determined to prove that a woman from East Africa could command respect and capital in this hyper-competitive, often traditional world. I succeeded. I had the car, the apartment, the respect. Yet there was an emptiness that the luxury couldn't fill. The hustle was exhilarating, but exhausting. I began to wonder if there was an easier path, one where I could keep my success but share the burden. I remembered a conversation with my mentor before I left Nairobi. She'd looked me dead in the eye and said, "Zara, you chase perfection, but be careful. Perfection often comes with a hidden price. Sometimes the most beautiful cages are the ones you build yourself." I dismissed her then, certain my strength was enough to withstand any temptation. It was late, past midnight, and the only sound was the hum of the AC and the distant roar of traffic. I was staring out at the impossible wealth below, contemplating the sheer exhaustion of my relentless drive. Just as I was about to turn away from the window, my phone rang. The screen displayed a name that promised everything I lacked, Tariq Al Maktoum. Tariq's world was a different dimension entirely. He was an Emirati real estate mogul, a man whose name was synonymous with the skyscrapers I looked down upon. Our professional paths had crossed several times, always at the highest level, deals, forums, networking dinners. But this time, the invitation was personal. It was an exclusive charity gala held at his private villa in the Emirates Hills, an area so luxurious it felt like a separate, gilded country. Stepping out of the car that night, the air felt thick with expensive perfume and the low murmur of high-stakes conversations. The villa was not just large, it was a fortress of marble and glass, overlooking an infinity pool that melted into the distant city lights. Every detail, the antique Persian rugs, the original artwork, the quiet precision of the staff, spoke of unimaginable, generational wealth. I felt, for the first time since leaving Kenya, small. Tariq met me by the fountain, dressed in a pristine white thobe that emphasized his imposing height and effortless authority. He was charming, of course, with eyes that held a depth of calculation I mistook for profound understanding. He didn't just talk about my startup, he spoke about my future, framing my ambition not as a struggle, but as something precious that needed to be protected. "You work too hard, Zara," he murmured, handing me a glass of iced lemon water, knowing I never drank alcohol. "A woman of your brilliance should be curating, not constantly fighting. That is what I can offer you, stability." He hinted that my freedom was a constant vulnerability in the harsh business world, suggesting that my success made me a target. He positioned his wealth not as a distraction, but as the ultimate shield. The pull was immense. The idea of trading the constant grinding hustle for a secure, beautiful harbor was intoxicating. It was the promise of rest, of being truly taken care of. The evening culminated in a walk through his vast, meticulously manicured gardens. He spoke of family, of tradition, of building a legacy together. He didn't just propose marriage. He proposed a complete, secure future, one where my entrepreneurial spirit could flourish without the threat of financial ruin or constant stress. It was a golden promise, a complete overhaul of my difficult, lonely life. It seemed too good to be true. If you want to know how this story unfolds, if Zara accepts this gilded offer and steps willingly into a world defined by unimaginable wealth and hidden expectations, subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. I went home that night and barely slept. My mind raced, weighing the cold, hard facts of my independence against the warmth and security Tariq offered. I knew what I would lose. The visceral thrill of signing my own checks, the pride of standing entirely on my own 2 feet. But I also knew what I would gain: peace, protection, and a partner who commanded respect everywhere he went. The struggle was real, a painful caring between the woman I was and the woman Tariq promised I could be. I remembered the grit of Nairobi, the years of saving, the sheer audacity of launching my company in Dubai. Was I really going to trade all that hard-won identity for comfort? When I finally accepted his proposal, I tried to set boundaries immediately. I insisted that my startup, my baby, remain active. I need to work, Tariq, I stated, trying to keep my voice firm despite the shimmering diamond on my finger. My company is my identity. He smiled, a gentle, understanding smile that melted my resolve. Of course, my love, I admire your drive. But after the wedding, you must slow down. We have a life to build, social obligations, a family to consider. Perhaps you can focus on the strategic side, delegate the daily stresses. It was a small concession, a polite suggestion to ease off the throttle, but it felt like the first slice of my ambition being trimmed away. I agreed, telling myself I was being pragmatic, adapting to a new culture and a new life. The wedding preparations began immediately, a whirlwind of extravagance that drowned out my inner doubts. The celebration was breathtaking. 1,000 guests, designers flown in from Paris, flowers that cost more than my first year's revenue. It was a fairy tale, a public declaration that I belonged to this world now. But beneath the silk and the celebration, I felt a deep, hollow ache. I was sacrificing a part of myself, a piece of my professional soul, for this beautiful security. If this moment, the struggle between ambition and security, the painful choice to trade hustle for a gilded promise, touched your heart, leave a like. It tells me these stories matter to you. The moment we settled into Tariq's massive villa, which I quickly dubbed the Golden Cage in my mind, the true nature of my new life began to reveal itself. The house was enormous, staffed by quiet domestic workers who moved like shadows. I had access to every luxury imaginable: private drivers, personal shoppers, chefs, but suddenly I had no schedule of my own. Tariq's control was subtle, disguised entirely as devotion and care. He didn't forbid me from working, he simply made it impossible. I remember my first attempt to hold a major remote meeting with my team in London. I was setting up my laptop in the small, beautiful office suite he'd designated for me. Just as the call was about to connect, Tariq walked in, looking concerned. "My dear Zara, you look stressed," he said, kissing my forehead. "I have wonderful news. I took the liberty of resolving your biggest headache." He then casually informed me that he had bought out the major competitor I had been battling for 6 months, the one I was about to pitch against. He hadn't consulted me. He simply absorbed them into his portfolio, claiming he did it to protect me from the stress of competition. It was a massive, generous act, but it felt like a heavy chain snapping around my ankle. He hadn't protected my company. He had neutralized my battle, and thus my purpose. When I expressed my frustration, he looked genuinely hurt. "But why are you upset? You won. You don't have to fight anymore." My attempts to go to my own office became increasingly difficult. There was always a prearranged family obligation, a dinner with an important sheikh, or a social event for which I needed hours of preparation. My professional efforts were constantly undermined by the beautiful, suffocating demands of his social life. I realized my schedule was no longer mine. I had to ask permission to leave the house, and often the answer was a gentle but firm refusal disguised as protection. The realization hit me. I wasn't his partner. I was his most prized possession. The final straw of that early period came during a weekend trip to the Maldives. We were boarding his private jet, and Tariq took my phone, slipping it into his pocket with a practiced ease. "No disturbances this weekend, my love," he said, smiling. "We need privacy." He kept it for 4 days, effectively cutting me off from my contacts, my business, and the last vestiges of my independent world. Tell me in the comments, would you have realized this was control disguised as love, or would the luxury have blinded you? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this moment of realization. As the months passed, the isolation deepened. The villa became a beautiful prison. I was forced to attend endless, glamorous social functions where my role was purely decorative, the ambitious Kenyan entrepreneur who had chosen the security of the powerful Al Maktoum family. I was admired, envied, and utterly silent. My startup, which I tried desperately to manage remotely, slowly began to die. Tariq had absorbed the financial structure, and without my daily presence, the energy and drive vanished. I tried to work late one evening, furiously typing a strategy document, determined to keep the flame alive. Tariq found me there, long after the staff had retired. He didn't yell, he didn't even argue. He simply came up behind me, placed his hands gently on my shoulders, and leaned down to whisper, "Your work is here, with me, Zara, building our life, hosting our guests, being my wife. That is enough." He then gently closed my laptop and carried me to bed, leaving the machine on the desk like a discarded toy. I started looking in the mirror, and I didn't recognize the woman looking back. She was polished, impeccably dressed, dripping in jewels, but her eyes were empty. The spark, the fierce independence I carried from Nairobi was gone, replaced by a kind of elegant idleness. It was a profound identity crisis. I had become exactly what I feared, a beautiful appendage. The final, devastating discovery came when I tried to log into my old business accounts, needing some documentation for a tax filing. I found that Tariq hadn't just absorbed my competitor, he had subtly changed the ownership documents of my original company, finalizing its integration into his vast, complex portfolio. I was no longer the owner. I was merely a past director. He owned my entire professional history. The realization shattered the last illusion of partnership. I was trapped, financially and emotionally dependent on a man who saw me as property. For those who want more, deeper stories, early access, and exclusive content about breaking free from situations like mine, consider becoming a channel member. Join our community and support these narratives of resilience. The discovery that Tariq had stolen my company, my identity, my legacy, was the crisis point. The golden cage suddenly felt like solid steel. I walked into his study late that evening, the ownership documents trembling in my hand. My voice, usually so strong in the boardroom, shook with raw fury. How could you do this, Tariq? You promised I could keep working. You promised me freedom within this life. He didn't flinch. He sat back in his leather chair, calm and completely unrepentant. I gave you security, Zara. Total, absolute security. You have everything. Why would you want the stress of that petty business? Freedom is a myth for women of your standing. It is dangerous. I protected you from that danger. You are mine now, and I provide for mine. His words were delivered with such cold clarity, such absolute belief in his right to control me, that I realized the marriage was irrevocably broken. He hadn't married a partner. He had acquired a prize. My choice was stark. Remain the gilded captive, or risk destitution and social ruin by leaving. I chose freedom. The confrontation fueled me with an ice-cold determination. I had to reclaim myself, and that meant leaving his world entirely. I knew I couldn't simply walk out. He had connections everywhere, and I had nothing but the clothes on my back and the jewels he'd gifted me. I began making small, strategic preparations. The first step was finding a way to communicate. I needed my old network, but my phone was still monitored. I searched the villa relentlessly, relying on the sharp observational skills I'd honed in the cutthroat world of startups. I finally found it, an old, unused tablet tucked away in a guest room safe, a relic he'd forgotten about. It was my hidden key. I knew that finding strength in impossible situations requires meticulous planning. There's so much more to stories like these, especially about the quiet, calculated steps women take to regain control. Check the pinned comment for a special collection I've put together for you, detailing these journeys of self-reclamation. Using the hidden tablet, I managed to bypass his network's basic security filters, a task that felt ironically familiar, like debugging an old system. I reached out to my former business partner, now based in Singapore, using an encrypted channel. I didn't ask for money. I asked for help coordinating my exit. I need to disappear, Kenji, I typed. I need to become Zara Okello, the entrepreneur, again. My next step was financial. I couldn't touch Tariq's bank accounts, but I began selling off the minor, untraceable assets he had gifted me. Small pieces of jewelry, designer handbags I never used, things that wouldn't be missed immediately. It was humiliating selling my gilded chains, but every dirham was a step toward independence. I built a small escape fund. Crucially, I also began creating a digital paper trail. I used my reclaimed tech skills to gather evidence of Tariq's financial maneuvers regarding my company, ensuring I had legal recourse later. I needed proof that my company was stolen, not gifted away. The hardest part was securing a safe place. Kenji found me a temporary, modest apartment outside the main city center, far from the opulence of Emirates Hills, a place Tariq would never think to look. The commitment was terrifying, trading marble floors for linoleum, but the thought of earning that linoleum with my own effort was exhilarating. I was no longer the idle wife. I was Zara Okello, the strategist, the fighter. Watching myself reclaim my power, using the very skills I feared I had lost, was the greatest reward. Creating these stories takes time and heart. If watching Zara reclaim her power and plan her escape moved you, you can support the channel by clicking the Super Thanks button below. Every bit helps me bring more stories to life. The day of the planned departure arrived 3 weeks later. It was the evening of a major diplomatic dinner Tariq was hosting at the villa. The chaos of preparation, the caterers, the florists, the endless stream of important guests was the perfect distraction. My heart pounded against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of fear and resolve. I was dressed in a simple abaya, chosen because it was easy to move in and concealed the small satchel I carried. Inside were the hidden documents, the emergency cash, and the old business card that had sparked this fight. I waited until Tariq was deep in conversation with a visiting dignitary. His focus was absolute. He wouldn't notice my absence for at least an hour. I slipped out of the main receiving hall, moving silently through the maze of hallways. The villa felt oppressive, the silence of the private wings deafeningly loud after the buzz of the party. I had to pass the main security checkpoint, manned by a new guard I hadn't yet been introduced to. I kept my head down, moving with the practiced haste of a servant, knowing that any hesitation would raise suspicion. "Is everything all right, madam?" the guard asked, his voice low. I paused, forcing myself to meet his eyes, putting on the calm, slightly bored expression of the woman Tariq had trained me to be. "Just retrieving something from the car before the next guests arrive," I lied smoothly, a small detail for the table settings. He nodded, already distracted by his earpiece. I walked past, feeling the sweat prickle my palms. I reached the garage, found the prearranged vehicle, a plain, inconspicuous sedan driven by a contact of Kenji's, and slid into the back seat. The engine purred to life, and we pulled out of the massive iron gates. As we drove away, I looked back at the villa. It was blazing with light, a magnificent monument to possessiveness. The golden cage. I thought of the warmth, the comfort, the effortless life I was abandoning. But I felt only a profound sense of relief. I was driving toward uncertainty, toward a hard fight, but I was driving toward me. Don't forget to check the pinned comment for more stories like this one, focusing on women who fight for their freedom and reclaim their true identity. Once I reached the safe apartment, small, functional, gloriously anonymous, I waited 48 hours for confirmation from Kenji that I was legally clear of Tariq's immediate reach. Only then did I allow myself to breathe. My first act as a free woman was to send Tariq one final, clear message. I used the encrypted tablet, knowing he would eventually see it, but only after I was safe. "Tariq, you offered me a golden cage, but I chose the air. You thought security was ownership. I have chosen freedom, and I will earn my own security, brick by hard-won brick. I am not your property. I am Zara Okello." I hit send and immediately deactivated the device. The immediate aftermath of freedom was not glamorous. I was in a small, rented office space with peeling paint in a quiet industrial area, a stark contrast to the glittering tower I once commanded. But every day I felt the life flooding back into me. I was working hard, harder than I had in years, building my business essentially from scratch, using the evidence I gathered to legally challenge Tariq's claim on my original intellectual property. I reflected on the emptiness of the mansion compared to the satisfaction of earning this small functional space. In the mansion, I was bored, suffocated, and invisible. Here, I was tired, struggling, but profoundly alive. The legal battle was long and grueling, but because of the meticulous paper trail I had created, I successfully defended myself. Tariq, accustomed to winning through sheer power, was stunned when a small, independent woman used his own system against him. I secured my freedom and a small, symbolic settlement that allowed me to restart my company without his influence. Looking at my modest desk piled high with files and coffee cups, I realized the true empire I sought wasn't measured in skyscrapers or assets. It was measured in the strength of my own independence. The cost of the golden cage had nearly been my soul, but the price of reclaiming myself was worth every moment of fear and struggle. Thank you for being here, for listening, for feeling with me through this difficult journey. If you'd like to support more stories of resilience and self-reclamation, the Super Thanks button is just below. Now I look at the small framed photo I keep on my desk. It's a picture of myself from my Nairobi days. The girl with fierce, determined eyes, wearing a simple cotton dress, ready to take on the world. That girl never stopped fighting, even when the woman she became was blinded by luxury. I realize now that the most dangerous chains are not made of iron, but of gold. They are heavy, they are beautiful, and they promise you everything except the one thing you truly need, yourself. My life is not easy now. It requires grit, patience, and endless work. But I am the master of my own time, the architect of my own future, and the owner of my own name. That is a wealth Tariq could never comprehend and certainly never buy. I close my laptop, ready for a new, self-directed day. The journey taught me one critical, unchanging truth: never confuse security with freedom. If you enjoyed this story of ambition, entrapment, and ultimate self-reclamation, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. More powerful stories are coming soon. Thank you for being part of this journey.